the food is a representation of the food that I ate growing up, with my little twist and spin on a few things. And the name Emeryville is a combination of my great aunt. Her name is Millie, and my grandmother's name was Lily Bell. It's a way of me taking them on this journey with me, because they were so influential in influencing my passion in the kitchen.
That was restaurant owner Fernay McPherson. I'm Jeff, and this is Storied San Francisco. Every week on this podcast, you'll hear from business owners, photographers, bartenders, and other San Franciscans, telling stories and responding to the question, what is it about this place? Welcome to Season 2, Episode 14. Fernay was born and raised in the Fillmore. She'd been cooking all of her life, but once she got involved with La Cocina, her journey, as she calls it, really took off. In this podcast, Fernay reflects on her childhood in the Fillmore in the 80s and 90s. Her family provided inspiration for her cooking back then. She went to culinary school, ran a food truck, and started catering. She also got involved with La Cocina, whose mission is to cultivate low-income food entrepreneurs as they formalize and grow their businesses. Last March, Fernay opened her first brick-and-mortar spot at Public Market Emeryville, where we recorded this podcast. Here's Fernay.
Born and raised in San Francisco, in the Fillmore district of San Francisco. And I currently still live there. I've moved away, but I went back about 10 years ago to the same neighborhood that I grew up in. So,
can you give us like a cross street so we can visualize?
I was born and raised on McAllister Street, and right across the street from the Ella Hill Hutch Community Center.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so.
What era, what like decade did you
grow
up?
80s and 90s.
Got it.
My young adult, teenage/young adult was more the 90s, and my childhood was more the 80s. And, back then it was a predominantly African-American neighborhood, rich in African-American businesses, not as much as it was though in the 60s,
Sure.
before redevelopment came in and things like that. But it was still a presence, in the Fillmore when I was a kid. I always say, it has changed, and it's like bittersweet for me because while the crime is not as much, that love that was there as a community is no longer there.
Right.
So,
did your parents, were they there in the 60s? Or?
Yes. So my dad is also a San Francisco native, and he was also raised in the Fillmore all of his life. My mother migrated from Texas when she was in, I think, elementary school or something.
Where in Texas? I'm from there.
Port Arthur, Texas.
Okay, down on the coast.
Yes.
Yeah, got it.
So she came on the bus with fried chicken and pound cake as her lunch.
Damn, I want her to be my mom.
Right.
That sounds awesome.
So
did your dad, growing up, talk about the neighborhood much with you?
Oh, yeah, my dad, still, he talks about the neighborhood. He just knows, so everything, what everything used to be. And, I went to eat at Nopa not too long ago, and I wanted a ride, so I didn't have to call Lyft. And I was like, Dad, can you drop me off? And so he dropped me off, and as he was dropping me off, he was like, oh, you going to the old wash house? And I'm like, that's right, it was a wash house, right? This hottest new restaurant used to be a laundromat. But that's just real common with my dad. When we're out in the city, he talks about, okay, this used to be this, and that used to be that. He actually came and did an interview with me before to talk about his San Francisco, because I feel like his San Francisco is really different than mine, just because he's been there all his life, and I grew up as the community, was on the path of changing. So.
Right. So growing up, you were kind of, not only were you immersed in Fillmore culture, but you had that legacy of, like you said, your dad was also born and raised.
Yeah, my dad, my Aunt Minnie, who was, I've named the business after, and my grandmother. My grandmother is not here, but my aunt is still here. And she can talk about even more, It's like we have these 3 generations that
she's another
talk
native?
About their, yeah.
Oh, wow.
No, so she is, but she came when she was, pretty much she's been here all her life. She was maybe about 7, My great grandfather ended up here in San Francisco during the war, and the family came after him, and they came from Texas, I always get her Texas mixed up, but I think it was Amarillo.
Oh, yeah. I've lived there.
Yeah.
My dad's from there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So they came from that part of Texas. And like I said, we have 3 generations that have their own, their own Fillmore.
Yeah. Love it. I noticed that, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I noticed that you guys' shirts say.
Right.
Yeah.
And I, the point of me doing that was because I feel like the concept was born there. The concept was born there before I even realized the concept. And also my food truck, I started with a food truck, and the food truck was in the Fillmore.
Right.
It was in Hayes Valley. We don't have it anymore, but when we launched in the Fillmore.
Yeah. So. Hayes Valley doesn't have Hayes Valley anymore.
Yeah, Hayes Valley is very different.
So can we talk a little bit about how you got involved with La Cocina, and if you had any history of cooking, or even if it was just like at home, just mess around. Walk us through that.
Yeah, the passion was always there for me. I started cooking with my family at a young age, helping with family dinners and things like that. And then about 2009, I was laid off from my job. It relocated to Southern California, so I took that opportunity to go to culinary school and start to follow my passion of cooking. And I lived in Sacramento back then, and then I came back up to San Francisco in 2011. And
were you going to culinary school in Sacramento?
In Sacramento.
Got it.
Yeah. And then when I came back up to San Francisco, I connected with an organization called Urban Solutions, which is closed now, and they were offering this program for people who wanted to start a food truck. And La Cocina was partnered with that program along with the city of San Francisco. So that's how I got affiliated with La Cocina. And from that, they brought me into the La Cocina program. And that's when we worked towards launching the food truck.
Yeah, because La Cocina, can you talk about their program?
Yeah, so La Cocina is a nonprofit incubator program that helps immigrant and minority women formalize their food businesses. There have been a few men in the program as well, but they just bring you into the program and just it's almost like a baby where you learn every step of how to operate a business, because most people go into the program because they love to cook.
Right.
They have a background with cooking, whether they went to culinary school or just cook out of their homes. So the business side, you don't really know.
Right.
That it's a whole nother beast.
Yeah.
So they kind of
it's like
building that.
Cooking is an art and business is a science. Those are two
exactly.
different parts.
And so it's combined. They help with combining those two.
Yeah. And do you get that in culinary schools, or sometimes maybe the business side, or?
In culinary school, the business is for me.
Yeah.
Because I went through like an 8-9 month program, and it was just like maybe a couple of classes, so maybe a couple of days where we went through like recipe development. But that's about it.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't help with like financials and business plans and things like that, branding and
location, which I want to talk about, by the way. How long were you with La Cocina, or how long were you with their program?
I started La Cocina in 2011.
Okay,
so,
after you got back from.
And I just graduated the program when I came here last year, and it's almost a year for us here. In March 19th to be exact. It'll be a year that we've been here in this location. So that's when I graduated the program. But in graduating, like La Cocina is with you for as long as you want them to be.
Right.
Beyond graduation. I actually just came back from New Orleans with Caleb. We went to some food symposiums out there. So the support is continuous. Like they don't leave you.
Yeah, it's not like you graduate.
It's
and you're
a
gone.
lifetime relationship.
Yeah. No, but that's awesome. Right? It's like getting people to a certain line and then just bailing on them is like, well, then what was it all about?
Well, we're going to keep supporting you, and they absolutely do.
Was it always your intent when you started with them? Was it always your intent to open your own place? Or I guess before you got involved with them?
I always tell people I did not foresee this journey. I absolutely did not. I knew that I wanted to cook.
Right.
I did know that, but I didn't foresee where I was going to be in this industry. And I think La Cocina helped with me really recognizing, okay, what my journey is in this food business, and how important my story is. Because that was one thing I had never thought about. Like,
you're just living your life.
Right. I'm just cooking, and people are going to buy my food, and they're going to eat it. Like, Yeah. So I didn't think, okay, people want to hear your story. And that was one thing that La Cocina helped with building within me, to be able to share my story. Because I didn't know how to do that either, And one of the events that really helped me was the Voices from the Kitchen. So Voices from the Kitchen is a series of stories of people who are somehow affiliated with the food industry, and maybe not, depending on the theme of the night, but you just come in and share your story around whatever that theme is, on stage, a live audience. It's really dope. It's really dope. I would just say, definitely, if you have a chance, check it out.
Yeah, it sounds cool. Where do they usually do it? The Norse Theater, I think?
It has been at the Swedish American Hall. Right. And then also, I want to say the last one was also, it was one in San Francisco at the Swedish American Hall, and then in San Jose.
Okay.
So they expanded the series a little bit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you said when you had your truck, it was a Mini Bell's truck?
It was a Mini Bell's truck. It was a trailer.
Is that how you started with your business?
Yes.
Okay.
With the truck. Well, I started with catering. Like,
oh, got it.
If we go pre-La Cocina, I started with cooking out of my kitchen, just selling plates in the neighborhood.
Nice.
And then when I went over to La Cocina, I started to get more into the catering, and catering for, bigger businesses, bigger companies, opposed to small local things. And then after about a year or two in is when I launched the trailer.
Mm-hmm. And you had that in San Francisco?
That was in San Francisco. It was at Hayes Valley, and then we were in our off-the-grid rotation every other week at the 5th and Minna in Civic Center.
Oh, right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So why did you go from food truck to brick and mortar, I guess is what they call it, right? Yeah,
brick and mortar. Eventually, I knew, like, after being in the food truck and doing corporate and special event catering, I knew that I wanted to have, a brick and mortar. But this space came because it is affiliated with La Cocina as well. They designated this as a La Cocina pop-up. So I'm the second business to come into this space. Neon Bai was the first. And now she's in her brick and mortar in Fruitvale.
Nice.
And now I'm working to negotiate to stay here in the market, but in a permanent location in the main corridor. And then this will stay as a La Cocina pop-up stall. So,
does it matter to you at all that your restaurant is not in San Francisco?
Well, like I said, I've been a part of La Cocina since 2011, and some businesses did come in before me and come in after me and graduate into a brick and mortar space. But our journey and our goal was so hard in getting me, into a space in San Francisco that just didn't happen. It just didn't happen. We really worked hard to get in the Fillmore, but it didn't happen. So this was an opportunity to come into a space, develop a following, introduce more people to my food outside of catering, because I wasn't doing the truck anymore.
Right.
Outside of catering and special events, and it's been great. Even though it's not ideally where I would want my brick and mortar, but just because I'm here, it doesn't stop my grind, to get in the city. So, we're still working towards that, but I'm glad that I did take this opportunity because it's been great. We've developed a new following, a bigger following, and people have learned about Mini Bells.
What do you foresee for maybe the next 5 years or so? 3 years, whatever.
Yeah, this brand, I definitely want to expand into multiple locations, not just in Emeryville, not just in San Francisco, but even beyond that. But I feel like, I'm working, with some people, and hopefully we can, make my dream of being in San Francisco a reality at some point, whether it's this Mini Bells brand or a different concept. But, because I would love to have a breakfast lunch joint as well. So.
Yeah.
depending on where.
If it gets in the Fillmore, you could call it Coming Home.
Right. Coming Home Cafe.
No, it just makes so much sense to me. I understand there are economic challenges to it, but it just makes so much sense to me to have someone of the neighborhood.
Right, in the
come
neighborhood.
Back
and that's been the sad part about just the neighborhood in general, because like 1300 was the last African American business on Fillmore to close, right. And now it's like non-existent. So,
which is just mind-boggling.
Yeah,
but it's the reality. Do you like living over there still?
I do. I hate all the traffic that's now there.
Yeah. And
it's nowhere to park, and the parking tickets no. But I love being in my community. Like, yeah. I live like the next building over. My parents are there. They're still in my childhood home.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, I still love being in the community. I still love being able to say, we're still here. Because that's not the case for everyone.
How do you feel about the rest of San Francisco now, kind of versus what it was for you growing up?
I think it's just evolving into something different. I think it's something that just happens. Like I said, my Fillmore was different than my dad's, and my dad's was different than my auntie's. So it's just something that happens, and we just have to I want to make sure that as it evolves, that I have a presence there. I have a presence of something that was there and will remain to be there.
That was restaurant owner Fernay McPherson. Check back next week when we'll hear stories from SF Houseboat resident Sarah Davis. Music for the podcast is by Otis McDonald. Film photography is by Michelle Kilfeather. Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay up to date on everything we do. All past episodes are up on our website, storiedsf.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If that happens to be Apple Podcasts and you have a minute to spare, please rate and review the show for us. Send comments or suggestions to storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.